Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Just a quick warning, not a warning, but just a heads up. If you hear a little bit of background noise today over the course of the next hour, we've got some work being done around the Watchman studio. So you might hear a few noises here and there, but don't worry, all is well. And we have a lot to discuss today. Some breaking news. Of course, we're going to talk about, and my trusty producer Daniel is already saying, hey, in the chat, which is very active already, by the way, with people from around the world, welcome everyone. But Daniel said, look, in the chat, some people are already asking about the headline, Hezbollah infiltrates Israel. What does that mean? Well, we're going to break it down in a minute. Before I do, we've got some breaking news, folks. I mean, this literally just came across the wire as we were logging on here to start this live stream. This is big. And I'm going to quote directly from the Times of Israel. Here we go. An Israeli drone struck a cell of Palestinian gunmen who opened fire at a checkpoint in the northern West Bank, Judea and Samaria, on Wednesday night, the Israeli military and the Shin Bet security agency said. Folks, get this. What a way to start here. The strike marked the first targeted killing in the West Bank since 2006, according to the Israel Defense Forces. Remember, 2006, that was the waning days of the Second Intifada. So the first targeted killing in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria since 2006, that's 17 years. And according to the IDF, it came after attack helicopters were used in a military raid in Jenin earlier this week. Also, for the first time in some 2 decades. Now, a little bit of background there. We told you on Monday's newscast about that major clash in Jenin in the northern West Bank or northern Samaria, which occurred on Monday, June 19th. And we pointed out during that newscast that, yes, Israel carried out airstrikes in that area for the first time since the Second Intifada nearly 20 years ago. And now a drone, look, when you hear about Israeli drones operating, you think mainly, of course, about Syria, Gaza, southern Lebanon. But in Judea and Samaria, to have drones employed in an offensive way, you could say a defensive way, right? Because these terrorists were plotting an attack. But nonetheless, that's big news, folks. And the events there and airstrikes in Jenin carried out by these attack helicopters on Monday, it tells you that things are ramping up rapidly in the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, which is sad to see in one major respect because it is the biblical heartland where a great chunk of your Bible took place, especially during the Old Testament, and much of the New Testament unfolded in Judea and Samaria. And to see it now becoming a scene of terrorist violence and Israelis targeted again and again by the likes of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, as a Bible believer, someone who loves the land of Israel, who loves Judea and Samaria, it's frustrating to say the least. I've got stronger words I could use there, but let's just say frustrating to start. Let's read on here a little bit. Again, breaking news here. The IDF and the Shin Bet Security Service said in a joint statement that the gunman had opened fire at Jaleme checkpoint north of Jenin. Following the shooting attack on the checkpoint, an Israeli drone, carried out a strike on their vehicle. This cell was also responsible for a number of recent shooting attacks in the area, the IDF added, including towards towns in northern Israel over the West Bank security barrier. An IDF spokesman told reporters that in this drone strike just a short time ago, this happened, folks, today, Wednesday, June 21st, shortly before I'm coming to you here on the live stream, an IDF spokesman told reporters that 3 Palestinians were killed in the strike carried out by a Elbit Hermes 450 drone. I think I pronounced that right. The men were likely affiliated with, surprise, surprise, Palestinian Islamic Jihad or Hamas, but their identities were still being verified. Their bodies were seized by Israeli security forces, and 3 assault rifles were also found in the car. The IDF did not label the incident a targeted killing, but said it was about, quote, removing a threat. It went on to say, we identified a vehicle shooting at the checkpoint and we removed the threat. And the last word here, and then we'll move on. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant hailed the drone strike. He said, I praise the security forces who a short time ago carried out a targeted elimination of a terrorist squad that fired toward Israeli territory and had previously carried out several shooting attacks. There was a track record here. We will take an offensive and proactive approach to combat terrorism. We will use all the means at our disposal, and we will exact the heaviest price from every terrorist or terrorist emissary. What do you think? That's my first reaction. What do you think? Did Israel do the right thing here? I believe they did. Clearly, I believe Yoav Gallant has it exactly right, where he talks about being preemptive, offensive, and proactive when it comes to eliminating terrorist threats that seek to murder Israeli men, women, and children in cold blood, like we just saw yesterday in the biblical heartland. We report on the newscast, more on that, an update there in a second. But I think what you're seeing here, folks, whether it was the airstrikes on Monday in Jenin against an Islamic Jihad cell, or today with the drone strike, I think Israel is saying enough is enough. I know that sounds a bit simplistic, but look, these attacks in Judea and Samaria and also in Jerusalem have been escalating for months. One of our commenters, Lipaz Dotan, who is in Israel, says it's about time. I'm looking at the chat. And Lipaz, I think you're right. I think Israel is saying enough. Folks, it's unsustainable. No one could live under a constant terror barrage like the likes of Islamic Jihad and Hamas with their Iranian masters have been trying to unleash in Judea and Samaria over the past several months. You can't live like that. And Israel's saying this is a non-starter. It's a red line. And we are going to now push back and get a handle on this, because clearly it has been spiraling out of control. We need to get a handle on this. We're going to get a handle on this. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, said yesterday that all options are on the table in dealing with West Bank terror. And look, today comes on the heels of what we reported yesterday here on the newscast. Obviously, a heinous, demonic, that's the word we should use there because it fits, terror attack in which 4 Israelis were slaughtered in an Israeli community north of Jerusalem. They were laid to rest today. One was 21 years old, another was 17 years old. 2 Hamas gunmen, Hamas claimed responsibility for this attack yesterday, opened fire at a hummus restaurant, then a gas station next door, and murdered 4 people in cold blood. That happened yesterday. We had the clashes in Jenin on Monday, in which Israel Defense Forces soldiers and border police were also attacked by Islamic Jihad terrorists in Jenin, as I mentioned. And now we have today another attempted attack at a checkpoint, a shooting attack, and Israel is saying enough. We can't live like this. We have to get a handle on this. And I think what you're seeing this week is exactly that. Israel is getting a handle on this. And folks, I mentioned this yesterday, and I'll mention it again. Israel may be preparing for a larger military operation in Samaria, in particular, in the northern so-called West Bank. Places like Jenin and Nablus have been really the source, whether it's Islamic Jihad, Hamas, the Lion's Den, a relatively newer terror group as well operates there, Nablus in particular. Israel may have to go to stronger lengths, take much more proactive measures to get a handle on this. And the main reason I say that, you're not going to be surprised by this, but you need to know, because the head of the snake for all of this terror in Judea, Samaria, and beyond, the Iranian regime is now explicitly mentioning the West Bank as a place where they want to ramp up terror. And it's no coincidence that this week, as Islamic Jihad struck, as Hamas struck, leaders from Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad have been in Iran, meeting with top Iranian officials, including the president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, in Tehran. And Raisi and other top Iranian officials during these meetings openly called for more, quote, Palestinian resistance against the Zionist entity, as they call it. And again, a top Iranian official just today meeting with Ismail Haniyeh, one of Hamas's top leaders in Tehran, explicitly mentioned the West Bank as a place where we want to put pressure and ramp up attacks. I've been telling you folks that Iran wants to open a new front in the multi-front offensive against Israel. We're going to talk about one of those fronts in a minute, Lebanon, southern Lebanon, and talk about a stunning move by Hezbollah in terms of infiltration. We'll break it down in a minute. Whether it's Lebanon, whether it's Gaza, Syria, whether it's Yemen, there are multiple fronts surrounding Israel on all sides in what I call a ring of fire. Iran wants to open an additional front in Judea and Samaria. This is not brain surgery. It's clear from the events of the past few days that the likes of Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas are ramping up their activity in Judea and Samaria. It's been clear for months, but now it seems, folks, that a threshold was crossed over the past week. We had leaders from Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas, again, in Iran, and Iranian leaders specifically going out of their way to mention the West Bank or Judea and Samaria and encouraging more attacks to be carried out by Palestinian terror groups. And then we have 3 days in a row here. We had the major clashes in Jenin on Monday, Islamic Jihad. We have an horrific terror attack yesterday north of Jerusalem, Hamas. And then today we have an Islamic Jihad cell, carries out another shooting attack. They were eliminated in a drone strike. As we mentioned at the top, if you are just joining us, we've got breaking news. An Israeli drone strike, the first of its kind in the biblical heartland, Judea, Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, the first of its kind in 17 years, happened today. We led the newscast with that. The news just broke before we came on the air. Excuse me. A cell of 3, what appears to be Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists, were eliminated in their vehicle as they left the scene of a terror attack. They were eliminated in an Israeli drone strike. Folks, wow. What a way to start. And literally, I'm not kidding. I was talking to my producer, Daniel, and we're prepping. We're getting ready to go live with you here. And I'm checking my phone, just pulling up some different articles I want to quote to you from about the Lebanon Hezbollah situation. And boom, the breaking news of the drone strike. And hey, as we came on the air. So that's the news business sometimes. And now you know what's going on. You've got the latest there. But I think big picture, and that's what we'll discuss today, right, is Iran, surprise, surprise, again, as a puppet master, right, pulling the strings from Tehran, the head of the snake, when it comes to Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, the various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, the Iranian regime's pulling the strings. It's not some conspiratorial thing to say that. It's a conspiracy by them, quite literally, to eliminate the world's one and only Jewish state. But for us to say that, you can't just say, and some have commented, you're always talking about Iran. You blame everything on Iran. Well, if the shoe fits, let me tell you, not the Iranian people, by the way, who are the main victims. The Iranian people, the average Iranian on the street who detests this wicked regime, they're the main victims of regime terror in Iran, by the way. We've seen that unfold over the past several months. Thousands of Iranians in the streets, brutally cracked down upon by this regime, tortured, imprisoned, beaten, killed. Wow. We've got to get into the Lebanon situation, and we will shortly. I just want to stop, catch my breath, and give everyone a shout out who's joining us from around the world. We will have people, thousands already, and we'll have many more before we are done, joining us from every continent. We've got a troll, Shohat Khan, who we can block. Bye-bye. Just for your benefit, folks, we have thousands here. We've got a very active chat. Whenever there's a troll, we kind of weed them out and show them the door, because you deserve better than that, because we've got a great conversation going on right now, a give and take. And I won't have our great Watchmen viewers harassed by trolls who hop into the chat and try and stir things up. We're not going to do that. So hope you appreciate that. Keep the chat going. I know it's a good one, and it is going fast and furious there. Okay, we're going to get into the Lebanon situation. Before I do, a shout out to everyone for joining us, for watching us. We just passed 635,000 subscribers, which is mind-blowing, hard to believe. And folks, I really believe it's happening for two reasons. Number one, God Almighty, because this channel is by God and for God. I say it all the time. And number two, we're telling the truth, biblical truth we're sharing. And number three, we're sharing the kind of information that you're just not seeing anywhere else. You're not hearing about this in the mainstream media with any sort of urgency. Look, this drone strike, the first of its kind in 17 years, kind of a big deal, right? When that happens in the world's most pivotal and strategic region, the Middle East, this will be buried somewhere in the New York Times or CNN or the BBC. You're not going to hear about it in any kind of depth there. That's where we come in, because we know that what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. Not only that, we're talking China, we're talking Russia, we're talking Latin America, we're talking Great Reset and the madness unfolding in the Western world today, and much more, all right here on The Watchmen. So if you have not subscribed, hey, we'd love to have you on board here as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. And I threw the statistic out there last week before we move on here. Just wrap your head around this. I'm still trying to. Some 73% of our regular viewers here on The Watchmen are not subscribed. So only 27% of people who watch this channel on a regular basis actually have hit the subscribe button. Hey, we've got a goal here. We're at 635K. We're trying to reach 700K by the end of the summer. We set goals to challenge ourselves as a team, but not only that, we are driven to expand the message for such a time as this, because it is urgent. We want to reach as many people as we can around the world with the message that we're delivering here on The Watchmen. So we'd love for you to, it's completely free. Just click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and make it official. And we would love to have you with us here every single day. A lot going on, needless to say, as you can tell, and as we began today with breaking news. Okay, let's move on slightly, but not much, a little bit to the north, to the Israel-Lebanon border, where today we highlighted, I'm just pulling up a piece here I'm going to quote you directly from. We highlighted what can only be called as a Hezbollah infiltration of northern Israel. Yes, Hezbollah infiltration over the border into northern Israel. You might say, oh my word, wow, that's a big deal. Yeah, it is. We don't exaggerate. Secondly, it's nothing new, not that it's a regular occurrence, but back in March, as we reported here in the newscast, a Hezbollah terrorist also infiltrated that border, crossed into northern Israel, and detonated a bomb at Megiddo Junction in northern Israel, seriously wounding one Israeli citizen. Now, folks, I've been to Megiddo Junction many times in my travels going north from Jerusalem. I can tell you, in the morning when this attack happened back in March, it is usually packed. And by the grace of God, there wasn't a mass of people there when this explosive device, which was powerful, went off. Now, that Hezbollah terrorist was eventually caught and killed before he could flee back into Lebanon. But Hezbollah was behind this in March. And imagine if that attack was larger. It's bad enough that one man was seriously wounded, of course, prayers to him, his family. But could you imagine if 20 people were wounded, that 20 people were killed, God forbid? That bomb had that kind of potential to wreak that kind of havoc. Thankfully, again, it did not. So we had an infiltration in March. Clearly, Hezbollah growing bolder, to say the least. You want to think about boldness right now and talk about boldness, consider this. And this gets to the headline, the title of today's live stream from the Jerusalem Post. Hezbollah terrorists infiltrate Israel and set up a military post near the Lebanon border. Southern Lebanon, of course, is Hezbollah's home base. That is where they live and breathe. They rule that region with an iron fist. This military position, I'm reading here from the Jerusalem Post, bear with me, has been on Israeli land for weeks, and the IDF has chosen not to attack it for the moment. Wow, a little bit more backdrop here. Up to 10 Hezbollah fighters infiltrated Israel at its northern border and set up a small armed military position a few meters into Israeli territory over a month ago. It was revealed on Wednesday. Now, various reports said a week ago, 2 weeks ago. This one says over a month ago. The bottom line is a Hezbollah military outpost was set up on Israeli territory recently. The IDF said the matter is known and being dealt with by the relevant authorities. Since the incident, this is the J Post, the IDF has been working with the foreign ministry and has been in dialogue with UNIFIL, good luck, an arm of the UN, to convince the small Hezbollah contingent to withdraw without the use of force. The area where the outpost is set up is along the 300 blue line in the disputed Har Dov area. It is not considered a security threat because it is not close to any Israeli residential areas, thank God, and it's surrounded by IDF forces. Yet still, big deal. The IDF did not immediately detect the incursion before the outpost was set up, but did so shortly after. And hey, right now that outpost appears to still be there. Here's some more analysis on it from, dare I say, Haaretz, which is not my favorite publication to say the least, but they've got some interesting details here on this. Security sources, Israeli security sources, tell them that the posts were set up inside tents and manned by armed operatives of Hezbollah. 2 military posts in Israeli-controlled territory on the border with Lebanon, according to a discussion that took place today in the Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. The Israeli army said it's familiar, it's being dealt with, it's familiar with the issue, but pretty tight-lipped overall. Hezbollah has recently made public threats against Israel, and then some, as we just mentioned, that March bombing. And let's see here. Dozens of new Hezbollah posts and observation posts have been established along the Israel-Lebanon border in recent years. Folks, I have seen them and I have filmed them for the Watchman. Hey, you've seen it here on the Watchman Newscast on the Watchman TV show. Not only have we shown you what only look like watchtowers on the Lebanon side of the Israel-Lebanon border overlooking northern Israel, but of course, we went deep inside those Hezbollah terror tunnels with the Israel Defense Forces about a year and a half ago or so, and we did an entire show about that. There were at least 7 of those attack tunnels crossing the Lebanon border into northern Israel. Now, the IDF uncovered 7, I believe, 6 or 7, but are there more that were not detected? Look, this infiltration went undetected, apparently. The terrorists who crossed that border back in March went undetected before setting off that bomb. Hey, no one's better than the IDF, but not always easy. As we can tell you here in the United States, with what's going on, the chaos at our southern border, border security, not always the easiest. But it always helps when the political class has the will to enforce border security, which we don't have here in the United States currently, but which I believe Israel does have. A little bit more here. Do we have any more comments here? Okay, we don't. That's a little bit of the backdrop. Israel has not moved against this Hezbollah infiltration yet. I mean, talk about a bold move, right? Setting up two tents, apparently, a military outpost, I guess is the only way you could describe it. And clearly, and we saw this in March as well with the Hezbollah bomber who set off the bomb at Megiddo Junction. Clearly, Israel is trying to avoid a larger conflict with Hezbollah right now. If Israel takes military force against this Hezbollah outpost that is apparently on Israeli territory, but thankfully, just to repeat, it's not in a residential area, and the IDF is apparently all around this area. But nonetheless, if the IDF moves against this Hezbollah cell, either detains them, kills them, if Hezbollah returns fire, this could clearly spiral out of control, folks. It's no secret that in today's Middle East, as we say often here on the newscast, you should expect the unexpected. And what appears to be the slightest provocation could spark a broader regional war. What do you think the Israel Defense Forces should do? I'd love to see your comments here. Remember, we are going to end this live stream with a Q&A session. So leave your questions. I'll do my best to answer them. But let's get some people weighing in right now on what you think. I'm just looking at the chat right now. Man, we've got some incredible, smart people who are very well informed, who watch this program on a regular basis. I'm blessed as a host. I always say, as a basketball coach, I coach my daughter. I always say, man, it's so much easier, obviously, when you get a team that's kind of ready-made. They know the game, they know how to play, and you're not teaching from the ground up. You're not teaching how to dribble, how to pass, how to shoot. But they come in and they know what they're doing. It's rare that you get that in this age bracket, but it's always refreshing when you get a kid and wow, okay, she knows what she's doing. I kind of compare our Watchmen viewers to that many times, where I feel like you guys sometimes are finishing my sentences, which is kind of funny and fun. We've got 635,000 people subscribed here with us, and nothing better than having an audience that gets it, as I would say. You just get it, and such a well-educated viewership. So it's just a blessing for me, for sure. It makes it even more fun. And for someone who's coming, by the way, whether it's a basketball player I'm coaching or someone obviously that I'm speaking to here on YouTube or on the TV show, the Watchman TV show, if you come to this knowing nothing about the Middle East, about the Bible, about prophecy, about everything going on in the world right now, welcome. You will have so much information here at your fingertips every day on the Watchman show. You don't need to come in here as an expert. I was just joking a bit. In all seriousness, we want to inform and educate. That's what we seek to do here on the Watchman. So welcome one and all, and we will do our best to give you the kind of information that you just won't hear anywhere else for such a time as this. And if you want to do a crash course here, just look in our archives here on the channel. Go to the homepage under newscast. We've got full episodes of The Watchmen there as well. Plenty of material to get you up to speed. Okay, let me know what you think the IDF should do. Should they confront this infiltration, this Hezbollah infiltration on the northern border, apparently on Israeli territory? Should they confront it militarily? Should they try to defuse the situation? Something tells me this Hezbollah cell isn't just going to go quietly into the night. They've now established a beachhead there. Have they planted a Hezbollah flag there on Israeli territory? Consider that. I haven't seen photos yet of this military outpost that I know of, but have they planted the flag? Look, that green and yellow Hezbollah flag. What if they plant the flag at this outpost, take a few iPhone pictures real quick, and send those pictures throughout the world? Send it to official Hezbollah media. Send it to Al-Manar, which is Hezbollah's satellite TV network. Yes, they have their own TV network. They send it back to their masters in Iran, who blast it around the world through Iranian state media. They send it even on to Al Jazeera and other outlets in the region. Here we are. We have planted the Hezbollah flag on Israeli territory, and we've been here for at least over a week. No one has touched us. This is ours now. Could you imagine, folks, the propaganda coup that would be for Hezbollah? Because certainly, even though it might be a small patch of land, nowhere near a residential area, surrounded by the IDF, and this Hezbollah military outpost may disband it themselves overnight and retreat back over the border into Lebanon. But perhaps this serves their purpose. Perhaps it is, number one, a propaganda victory for them, where they're going to publicize this. Perhaps, number two, they're planning something there, which would seem perhaps unlikely if they're surrounded by the IDF, that they can pull much off, but nonetheless. Or perhaps number three, and perhaps most likely, it's just probing once again. It's just probing. And not just probing to downplay it. It's probing in a very serious and dangerous way. Hezbollah is daring Israel to respond. Much like the bombing back in March at Megiddo Junction, much like when rockets were launched from Hezbollah territory, southern Lebanon, back in April by Hamas, operating under the watchful eye of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. It seems that whether it's Hezbollah now, with this provocation, that's the only way I can describe it, folks. It's a provocation. They know they shouldn't be there, yet they are there, and they're still there, setting up a military outpost. Between that, between what Hamas did yesterday in Eli, north of Jerusalem, killing 4 Israelis, between what Islamic Jihad is doing in Jenin, probing is one way to put it. Provoking is another way. When I say probing, they're testing to see how far they can get, what they can get away with before Israel reacts with overwhelming force. It's real simple. And all along, their masters in Tehran are taking notes. They're observing the scene. This is not brain surgery, as I said earlier in the live stream. We saw it last month with Islamic Jihad firing over 100 rockets against Israel. Israel did not respond for 5 days, and then suddenly Israel unleashed massive force and eliminated at least 5 senior commanders from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But in all of these mini conflicts, folks, every time Israel goes toe-to-toe with Hamas or Islamic Jihad in Gaza, every time there's some kind of flare-up in the north with Hezbollah, and every time Israel operates in Syria, Iran is observing, watching, and taking notes. Quite literally, they are recording every Israeli action, movement, and response. They're not stupid in Tehran. Evil, yes, the Iranian regime, but not dumb. Remember, the Iranians, the ancient Persians, invented the game of chess, although some of my friends from India would beg to differ there. That's up for debate. But these are no dummies. Those among the Iranian regime, they're cunning and sinister. And every action is calculated, every action that they take. So they know exactly what they are doing. And again, if you hear a little bit of background noise, we do have some work going on around the Watchman studio here. Just a heads up. Hopefully my voice will drown it all out. But know that none of this is happening in a vacuum. None of it is happening by coincidence. This regime knows exactly what it's doing when it employs its various proxies. And I've called it death by 1,000 cuts. What does that mean? Just continue to hit and hit and hit, smaller and smaller and smaller, then a little bigger, and then a little more, and then a little more. Whether you're Hamas, Islamic Jihad, a few hundred rockets there, and then a few thousand rockets there, and can just continue, drip, 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 death by 1,000 cuts. That has been the strategy of the Iranian regime. We discussed this last week, that Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, said recently as last week, he said that, look, Israel or the Zionist entity, as he called it, is marking its 75th anniversary this year in the year 2023. Israel was miraculously reborn as a nation in 1948 in an act of God. The God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. More on that in a minute. But Ayatollah Khamenei said that, they're marking their 75th anniversary. There's a good chance Israel will not reach its 80th year. And the main reason he gave was the internal division inside Israel right now. Me, as a Christian, I would look at it and say a house divided against itself cannot stand. And the Iranian regime and Hezbollah have remarked on this consistently, folks, over the past several weeks, that the internal discord in Israel is leaving the Jewish state weakened, in their view, and more vulnerable to attack, in their view. They're gloating about it. They're salivating at the thought. That's why I believe it is no coincidence, again, that you're seeing an uptick in activity right now in Judea and Samaria. They, again, calculated and cunning. They know exactly what they are doing. It's not a coincidence. Now, if you talk to Israel's leadership and the IDF, they'll say, yeah, we've got internal division right now, no doubt. Not a good time with the political mess we have going on and people demonstrating in the streets, etc. But when the rubber hits the road and an external threat gathers against us, we will have our act together. We will be united against those external threats. I would say yes. I would say certainly I believe that. But it has not been encouraging to see, even as this terror wave continues over the past few months and the threats heighten, there's still thousands of demonstrators in the streets protesting over proposed judicial reform. Look, this seems like a time to me where Israelis certainly need to be united against these gathering external threats. And we're about to have a new Iran nuclear deal, a mini deal, as they call it, become official. I would say in the next few days, next few weeks. It seems that the U.S. and Iran are going to come to maybe not as much of a formal agreement that they had in 2015, that disastrous Iran nuclear deal that the U.S. pulled out of under President Trump in 2018, but a more informal deal where Iran promises, for whatever that's worth, and a promise from the Iranian regime, to not enrich uranium at a 60% clip. Now, if you get to 90%, not to get too in the weeds with this, just know this. If you enrich uranium at a 90% level, you are capable of building a nuclear weapon. The UN recently said that Iran has been enriching uranium, I believe, at an 84% clip, a hop, skip, and a jump away from that magic or tragic number of 90% enriched uranium. Now, the U.S. is trying to get Iran to only enrich to 60%. How about this? Demand they stop enrichment altogether. That's not going to happen under this current administration in Washington, but they want 60% enrichment, and they say, if you do that, we will give you billions of dollars. No, quite literally, folks. We will give you billions of dollars in sanctions relief if you do that. Wow. Someone wrote today, I think it was Elliot Abrams. He was working various administration positions over the years in D.C., and very smart guy. And he wrote, this is pretty unprecedented that a superpower, still, I suppose, even under this current administration, but the United States, obviously a powerful country, despite all our problems right now and weak leadership, the United States, pretty unprecedented that the United States is essentially going to what he called a middle power, Iran, and begging for a deal. And I've said this throughout, folks, over the past few weeks, really the past few years. Why is the United States, under this current administration, acting like Iran has all the leverage? The Iranian regime should have no leverage here in any negotiation with the United States. There's quite literally nothing they can give the U.S. other than an empty promise of we vow we won't enrich uranium past 60%. Nothing in there about attacking Israel. No demand by the United States that Iran ceases all activity through its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the rest against Israel. Nothing about Iran's ballistic missile program, which is probably the most robust in the entire region right now. We could go on and on. I put the question to you, what does the United States get out of this deal? And they're not calling it an Iranian nuclear deal this time, as I mentioned, because if they do that, then it has to go through Congress. And there are many in Congress who would like nothing better than to kill this deal right away and see it knock it off the ground, and rightfully so. So the Biden administration is going to be very cagey here. They're not going to call it a nuclear deal. They're going to call it maybe an understanding, but they won't try to formalize it and announce it like the Obama administration made a big deal out of that Iran deal back in 2015. They thought it was a big triumph, a big achievement. Ha! Funny how that worked out, or not. So look for the Biden administration to be a bit cagey and elusive about this when it comes to talking about this deal. Hey, reminder, the Q&A session very shortly, in like a few short minutes. Send your questions. Send your thoughts along. And hey, also a reminder, if you like the shirt here, the Watchman with Erick Stakelbeck, we have the Watchman store, which just opened by popular demand for years. We've had people asking, hey, man, where's some Watchman merch? So we've got Watchman T-shirts. We've got Watchman hats, mugs. We've got some stickers that you can put on your, as my daughter calls it, her hydro flask that she takes to basketball practice and soccer practice, and a bumper sticker as well on your car. Hoodies are coming. So check out the Watchman shop at shop.tbn.org/Watchman, M-A-N, Watchman. Some good stuff there just in time for the summer that we think you will like. And by the way, the back of this T-shirt says, you guessed it, never hold your peace. We think you like the Watchman merch shop. It's a cool way to show your support for the channel and show people out there in the world, hey, to check out the Watchman. And also, you help keep us going. This is a large channel, a large international TV show as well. It's not free, unfortunately. So we really appreciate your help, your support there, and most of all, your prayers, which has been what's gotten us where we are now and given us a growing platform by the grace of God. Okay, questions in a minute. One last thought about Israel and the prophetic sense. I mentioned earlier, 1948, an act of God for the nation of Israel to be miraculously reborn. And some might say, what are you talking about? Folks, who ever heard of such a thing? For a nation, for a people to be dispersed from their ancient and ancestral homeland for nearly 2,000 years. Now, a caveat there was always a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, always throughout those 2,000 years. After the temple was destroyed in AD 70 in the Bar Kokhba revolt, 60 years later, 70 years later, collapsed. 60 years later, collapsed. The Jewish people, most were either slaughtered by the Romans or dispersed to the ends of the earth, quite literally. But there was always, even at the lowest point in the Ottoman years, there was always a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, in particular in places like Tiberias, in the Galilee, and near the coast. Always. To the point where there was a Jewish majority in Jerusalem in the 1850s. That's roughly 30, 40 years before the Zionist movement even kicked into full gear. So just know that. But by and large, obviously, the vast majority of the Jewish people were scattered for nearly 2,000 years. No denying that. The Bible said this would happen. But the Bible also said that in the latter days, that very people would return to their ancient and ancestral homeland, the land God gave them. And I'm quoting the prophet Amos here from the book of Amos, never to be uprooted again. Again, who ever heard of such a thing? Can you give me another historical precedent for people to be emptied out of their ancient and ancestral homeland, to return nearly 2,000 years later, to revive the Hebrew language after over 2,000 years? The Hebrew language was not in regular use, folks, really since 2,500 years ago, even before the time of Jesus, in a major widespread way. You revive the Hebrew language, you return to your land, and it all happens to just make it even more improbable, probably the lowest point in the history of the Jewish people, other than the destruction, along with, I should say, the destruction of the temples, obviously, the Babylonian exile, the dispersion under the Romans, obviously the Holocaust. And out of the ashes of the Holocaust, 3 years after it ends, in 1948, 3 years later, Israel's reborn. What are the odds? And folks, this is only God. That's why I call the creation of Israel, the recreation, the reestablishment in 1948, clearly an act of God. You can argue with me. I think you're wrong. But if you disagree, leave a comment. Let's get into the questions. Give me 1 second, folks. I know we've got some good ones. I'm just pulling up the questions here. In the meantime, keep the chat going. Let's see what we have here. 1 second. Okay. I always love our questions. I wish I had an hour to get to all. Maybe we'll do a live stream one day where we just take strictly questions. What do you think? Would you guys like that? Comment, let me know. And we just do all questions. Here we go. Okay. Good ones again. Thanks for your patience, folks. Just looking here. Okay. Let's get to today's date. Okay. What do we have? Gwen Stone asks about a very hot topic that many of our viewers like to hear about. I believe she's referencing, of course, Isaiah 17, the book of Isaiah, chapter 17, verse 1, which talks about what can only be described as the destruction of Damascus, the Syrian capital, one of the world's oldest inhabited cities. It has never been completely destroyed, and yet Isaiah 17 says it will become a ruinous heap. This is Damascus. It will cease to be a city, according to the Bible, according to the book of Isaiah, chapter 17, verse 1. How will that happen? That's a guessing game, Gwen. I have no idea. I have an idea, but I shouldn't say I have an idea in my own head. I have some ideas about it. There have been many, I don't want to say theories put forward, but many have kind of debated this. How will it happen? Obviously, would it be an airstrike or something like that? Would Bashar al-Assad or Iran, his guests, and Hezbollah do something so heinous against Israel that Israel would respond with overwhelming force against Damascus? Possibly. Could there be an earthquake? It's a very active seismic region. Possibly. Could there be some kind of mishap in Damascus? We've talked a bunch here about the Iranian regime quite literally playing with fire in and around Damascus, in particular around Damascus International Airport. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear, who knows? That's also a possibility, some kind of accident. Folks, I wish none of this would happen. I wish it wasn't so, but I'm just telling you what the Bible says. It's not what Erick Stakelbeck says. The book of Isaiah is very clear. I believe from front to back, cover to cover, I believe the word of God is true, the Bible. I'm one of those crazy guys, I know, one of those wackos, I guess. In all seriousness, Isaiah says this is going to happen. So as nasty of a prospect as it is, it's eventually going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. And the Bible has a 100% accuracy rate when it comes to prophecy, no doubt. Okay, more questions here. Chris Perry asked, how do I get a Watchman t-shirt? Chris, I think I just mentioned it. Just go to shop.tbn.org/Watchman, and you've got all the Watchman merch and gear right there. And if you missed the link, you can probably rewind when this live stream's over, just rewind a bit. And I believe the URL will be up there on screen for you. Shop.tbn.org/Watchman. Okay, let's see here. This is a good question from Jesus Saves, which is an even better handle. Eric, from the years you've done news out of Jerusalem, do you feel there is a significant difference in these days from previous years? Yes. I was just telling my wife this recently. We were chatting about it. It's more intense. Jerusalem is always a spiritual battleground, folks. Many people say they can feel the heaviness when they're in Jerusalem. I have Israeli friends who tell me, I say, why aren't you in Jerusalem? They say, I could never live in Jerusalem. It's too intense and I can feel it. It's so tense. It's so heavy. And they say, I have to get out in the country, basically. I can't live in Jerusalem. It's too much. It is undoubtedly a very intense place where there is massive, massive spiritual warfare going on that we can't see behind the scenes, no doubt. Oftentimes, that spiritual warfare plays out in the physical, in the real world, no doubt. For me, I consider Jerusalem my second home. I love it. I am drawn to Jerusalem. It's like a gravitational tug on my heart. And when I'm not in Jerusalem, I'm thinking about Jerusalem. That said, absolutely, Jesus saves. To your question, no doubt things have become more intense. I can feel it. I've got the Holy Spirit as a follower of Jesus, And that means I have discernment, and I feel it. I feel it when I'm there. No doubt. It feels a bit more tense. Now, I don't say that meaning I feel physically threatened. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it just feels a little tense. Not that there's something imminent, that an attack's going to happen. That's not what I'm saying. I just kind of feel it, you know? I feel that in general today, folks. I feel that right here in the United States, where I'm coming to you from right now. Wherever I go in the world in 2023, I feel it. I've really felt it in particular since 2020. Go back even further, 2016, 2015, but it's intensifying, just a feeling of tension. Does anyone else feel that? And I've got the peace that surpasses all understanding. I know God is in control. I know he sits on the throne. I've accepted Jesus. I'm a follower of Yeshua, Jesus. I know where I'm going. And I have complete confidence and peace in that way. But that doesn't mean you don't still here in the natural world, in the physical, feel the tension when there is tension. And certainly I feel it. I don't know about you. Spiritual warfare here in the United States, massive battleground. The enemy wants this nation for obvious reasons. And number two, no surprise that I feel it in Jerusalem. Look, that's God's city. It's the city where he has written his name once and for all. He holds the title deed to that land, the land of Israel, and the city of Jerusalem in particular. It's the city of the great king. Of course there's spiritual warfare there. Of course the devil and all his minions want to get their claws into Jerusalem. It's the very place where Jesus will rule and reign when he returns. Jesus is not returning to Washington, D.C., Berlin, Tokyo, or London. He's coming back to Jerusalem. And when he puts his foot on the Mount of Olives, it will split in two. He will rule and reign from Jerusalem. So, of course, if it's the city of the great king, Yeshua, Jesus, of course, there's massive, massive spiritual warfare in and around Jerusalem. And yes, I feel it. I love Jerusalem. There's no place I'd rather be. I feel happy and joyful and at peace in Jerusalem. But by the same token, I just do feel tension in the air. More intense in certain places like Jerusalem, like the United States. But I don't know where you're coming from around the world, folks. We've got people from literally every continent. But do you feel it? If you're in Asia, if you're in Europe, if you're in Africa, if you're in Latin America watching right now, Australia, New Zealand, we have people from literally all those places who watch on a regular basis and join us here in the live stream. Do you feel what I'm feeling, or do you feel nothing? Let me know. Comment here. Okay, let's see what we have. That was an interesting question, Jesus Saves, and a good question from our viewer, Jesus Saves. Let's see. Okay, questions about the Hezbollah infiltration from Wondering Child 1 and Donovan Less. They asked these questions before the live stream started, it looks like. Did Hezbollah cross the border today? What does the infiltration mean? We broke all of that down, of course, earlier in the live stream. In case you missed it, just watch as soon as we wrap up here. This will be posted under Newscast in our archives. While you're there, of course, be sure to subscribe. It's completely free. Just hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well. And give us some thumbs up, too. Let's see. Wow, we've got some good questions here. Oh, here's a good one. Now, everyone join me in this. This is from Gideon Hyams. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Hyams. Gideon Hyams. He says, "Hi, Eric. Can you congratulate my father, Asher, for his 80th birthday? He is a great fan of you. Wow. And watches your program every day. Also, do you know anything about Israel's laser iron beam laser weapon program? We'll get to that second. But first, Asher, happy birthday. Mazel tov, my friend. Have a great birthday. God bless you. Thanks so much for watching every day. You're a blessing to us. I hope you have an incredible birthday. God bless you. And Gideon, thanks for sending that along. Everyone, give Asher for his 80th birthday. Give him some big birthday wishes and prayers there. God bless you, Asher. Thanks for watching. Okay, Gideon, to your question, Israel's Iron Beam laser weapon program, a good question, by the way. This should be rolled out soon, if I'm not mistaken. We reported here in the newscasts, gosh, about a year ago now. I think this was June 2022. that Israel was working on this laser technology. Now, we have Iron Dome, of course, the groundbreaking missile defense system that Israel has used to such great effect. It's got a 90% success rate. But Iron Beam is literally lasers. It's, science fiction type stuff, I guess you would say. It is laser beams acting as a missile defense system. It's called Iron Beam. Now, a year ago, I believe the IDF was saying it'll be ready in about a year. Well, we're about a year on. Look, it's pretty, I would think, pretty serious technology. It's probably not something you could prepare overnight to unleash. But nonetheless, Israel is working diligently on that laser technology. They say it's highly, highly effective, number one. Number two, it is much cheaper than Iron Dome. Key point there, right? It is more, I won't say it's affordable, but when it compared to Iron Dome is very expensive. I've interviewed IDF officials about this. I've seen Iron Dome with my own two eyes. We filmed at Iron Dome batteries in Israel, and they always make the point that, man, this thing is amazing. It is expensive. And the thing is, when you're surrounded by a ring of fire on all sides, like Israel is, where you've got tens of thousands of rockets and missiles, attack drones. Israel's the size of the state of New Jersey, folks, a quick reminder. But when you have tens of thousands of rockets, you've got drones surrounding you on all sides, courtesy of these Iranian proxies, that means you need a lot of missile defense. You've got the ultimate Iron Dome in the God of Israel, who neither slumbers nor sleeps. But in the physical, Israel also wants to have that missile defense as well. They've got Iron Dome, obviously, for shorter range rockets, which they've used to such great success against Gaza onslaughts. They've got David Sling for medium range rockets, and they've got the Arrow missile system to take out long range rockets. Now adding Iron Beam. And folks, look, all of these various systems will be employed in the coming major conflict in the region. We've called it here the Great Northern War, which, ironically enough, considering what we're talking about today, will be sparked, I believe, in southern Lebanon and Syria to the north. Yes, it will be a multi-front war, as Iran has boasted, as Israel has warned, where Hamas and Islamic Jihad to the south in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen to the south, those various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria will all likely throw their hat in the ring. But the main theater of operations, I believe, will be to Israel's north. Okay, we've got one. So that's why Iron Beam, hey, a lot of those rockets, missiles incoming, the more defense that Israel has, the better. Let's see. One quick one here. Good way to end. Donna Weaver. Eric, will it be safe to go to Israel on a Holy Land trip? Yes, Donna, it is. I always say I feel safer in Jerusalem at 12 a.m. than I do D.C., New York, or L.A. That's a sad fact as an American, but it's a fact nonetheless. I think many who have visited Israel, Americans, would agree with me, or anyone around the world, really. But you will be fine, more than fine, better than fine in Israel. A tour guide's not going to let you or lead you into Gaza. Don't worry. You will be just fine. It is very safe. I always feel safe and secure in Israel, no doubt. So, yes, I strongly encourage everyone watching. My good friend Ron Dermer says, the only thing better than standing with Israel is standing in Israel. It changed my life. It led me to following Jesus, to giving my life to the Lord. That's how big of an impact Israel had on my life. And I think it'll do the same for you no matter who you are. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Keep all of this in prayer. Asher, happy birthday again, my friend. God bless you. And until tomorrow, remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.